Let's get into the bulk of today's show. Everyone during off seasons talk about training camp battles, camp competitions. It is fascinating in this time that we live in right now, that around July 28th, training camp should be opening. We're about 3 weeks away, and it seems like the NFLPA and the NFL are having constant conversations on what the plans are. Again, we're just 3 weeks away, and no one has an clue of how these players are going to get to training camp and then stay in training camp and so on and so forth. But guys, let's go into an imaginary world, a perfect world where training camp is actually happening. We don't know about preseason games. We know there at least, well, hopefully are going to be 2, maybe not any actually at all. But let's go and focus on training camp competitions. Which teams have unsettled roster positions, and let's try to settle them right here, right now. John Daigle, you're up first.
I would like to start with the Ravens backfield because as we are now in the thick of it at team previews and getting more research under our belts, I keep coming back to the idea that we've discussed Clyde Edwards-Helaire as the perfect fit for Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes over the next X amount of years. We will talk about Jonathan Taylor here in a bit, who's being drafted as the 1.02 in dynasty leagues. But J.K. Dobbins, much like those players, is also a match made in heaven. Football guys, Matt Waldman in particular, is even taking him as the number 1 rookie in rookie drafts this year. And it's because you want to talk about the perfect match. J.K. Dobbins, RPO, class high 57% per fantasy points in Graham Barfield at Ohio State last year. And what happens? Of course, the Ravens led the league in RPOs. Over 5 yards per carry from shotgun at Ohio State, J.K. Dobbins did. And he goes to a team that ran the highest rate of shotgun last year. It is a match made in heaven, not only for training camp battles this year, but speaking long as well, this backfield shakes itself out. The team has a team-friendly void for 31-year-old Mark Ingram next year to get out of his deal if they choose to do so. And Gus Edwards is also a free agent. So if they choose to, they can not only lean on J.K. Dobbins this year, but also run wild with him and Justice Hill as their 2 backs next year. So whether it's a dynasty or, as we're talking about, a training camp battle to watch this year, I think J.K. Dobbins, the more I think about it, is the back to own here.
Hayden? Yeah, I think he's going to be, if you were asking me who's going to be the most efficient running back, regardless what stat you want to look at, my money would be on J.K. Dobbins this year. It's just a matter of, will he get enough carries to become an RB2? And I think to open the year, he's probably more of a flex guy. Maybe you want to keep him on your bench because I think Ingram's probably going to start the year as a starter. But man, as the season goes on, I want to be betting on J.K. Dobbins. He was a 95th percentile RB prospect according to my model. I mean, ran for 2,000 yards at Ohio State, and like Daigle said, just the scheme is just so perfect for him. Dual threat quarterbacks at Ohio State, dual threat quarterback with Lamar Jackson, and I think the Ravens are one of the few teams that can have 2 fantasy starters at running back, and they have the 4th easiest schedule. Like the Ravens are still going to be one of the 2 best teams, 3 best teams in the league this year, as long as Lamar Jackson stays healthy. And I think by the end of the year, we can see Dobbins as like a top 15, top 20 RB. Okay,
I agree with everything both of you said, but now it's time to play devil's advocate, okay? Because someone has to do it here, right? I know, Daigle, that this offseason you've written about, touches that are on the table that are unclaimed right now in all backfields across the NFL. How many do the Ravens have that are unaccounted for right now? 0.
I don't.
Right?
I bet say please answer because I don't have it pulled up in front of me.
0. Okay. Every single person who carried the ball last year is returning to the team. So usually that's how we figure out opportunity for new players entering a team. We have to do math with J.K. Dobbins, right? We have to do projection with J.K. Dobbins in terms of eliminating carries from Mark Ingram. Are they on the Ravens' own 20-yard line or the opposing 20-yard line, right? Because that's a major difference as well. Do we eliminate touches from Gus Edwards, who averaged somewhere between 5.3 to 5.6 yards per carry last season? I think we can all say that Gus Edwards is a limited player. I can also say that in 1999, I'm positive that Gus Edwards would have rushed for 1,300 yards because he's a super straight line player. So you have him going north and south, and then you have Lamar Jackson with a threat being east and west as well. I totally agree. If things, broke in his favor this season, either a Mark Ingram injury or, just claiming because he is the most talented back in that backfield, J.K. Dobbins has top 10 top 12 running back potential this season because of just how dominant that Ravens running game is. But it's something where we don't know at all because, again, Hayden, there are 0 touches available from that backfield heading into the season.
Yeah, the first thing he has to claim is the 11.9 carries and 1 reception per game that Gus Edwards and Justice Hill combined for last season. So that would be the first thing he has to do to become a flex option. And then from there, he digs into Mark Ingram, who was the RB12 on a per game basis last year. And you also have to make sure that Lamar Jackson stays healthy because if he's out, this whole rushing system is going to crash. So there is a lot of risk here, but in the range he's going in, I mean, you're talking about like David Montgomery, David Johnson, all these other guys have risk, and I don't think that their ceiling is quite as high.
Yeah, let's talk about where he's going because he's going as the running back 36 or 37 right now. That's after Sony Michel, James White, Kerryon Johnson, which is really just disgusting. Compare that to Mark Ingram. Mark Ingram's going as the running back 22, just ahead of David Johnson, David Montgomery, Raheem Mostert, all names that we have talked about, all names that likely have volume attached to their name. And while Mark Ingram was fantastic last year because of, one, the offense, and 2, he's still a very talented player, I think what Daigle mentioned in that he's almost certainly not in the team's plans in 2021. Maybe they try to get the most out of him in 2020, but we've also seen this kind of storyline be cyclical and happen in the past where, okay, a team has already drafted your replacement. They act like, he's going to wait in the wings and sit back and learn, and then he just outproduces all the veterans on the team. And that's absolutely possible here, Daigle, with J.K. Dobbins.
And what's funny is that I do think Edwards is one of the best pure runners in the entire league. He's just so silky. But I made a massive sweep to my best ball tiers on Rotoworld over the weekend, and I moved J.K. Dobbins up to the RB29 overall. I have been taking a little bit of Mark Ingram, but only to mask early players that may not have a role early, like your Jonathan Taylors, like your Clyde Edwards-Helaire, just so I can probably get a month out of an older veteran until J.K. Dobbins breaks through in week 6 or 7, whenever they start leaning on him more. But if this team, like Hayden says, does have the 4th easiest projected schedule this year, we can expect them to be favored by a touchdown or more in several games. And in those games, like Dobbins' floor is 8 carries for 90 yards and a touchdown. And that's a game you want. Those are games you want to flex them in, despite having questionable timeshare in their backfield. So I still love the player. I love the fit. And it just seems like that combination usually finds a way to make itself work. Before
we move on, let's just outline these rookie running backs because, and I know you're going to hit on one probably later with the Rams running backs, Hayden. Is that what you're going to do?
Yep.
Let's talk about it because you have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who's the running back 18 right now. Then you have Jonathan Taylor, the running back 26. You have DeAndre Swift as the running back 28. Cam Akers is the running back 29. Then we talked about J.K. Dobbins as the running back 37. Then right after him is Keyshawn Vaughn. That's the top 6. Hayden, do you agree with that order? Would you shift it at all?
Yeah, I would move DeAndre Swift down a couple spots. And then I think it's Clyde Edwards-Helaire in his own tier, Jonathan Taylor in his own tier after that. And then Cam Akers and Dobbins, I keep going back and forth. And then after that, DeAndre Swift. And then you guys can have Keyshawn Vaughn.
I will not. Before we move on, do want to say that if you're checking us out on YouTube, go and subscribe to the Rotoworld Football Podcast. Hey, we're also in audio form. If you don't like looking at our faces, just listen to us via your eardrums. Yes, any podcast platform you are on, go and search for the Rotoworld Football Podcast. We're up every Tuesday and Friday mornings. And again, our main goal is just to help you win your fantasy draft and ultimately win your fantasy league as well. And if you missed it, we did a live draft last week, and go and check out that one. Okay, I'll go next. I wrote up because again, as John Daigle mentioned, since he's trying to take over hosting the show, we are all writing up our team previews on Rotoworld right now. I recently wrote up the Carolina Panthers. Imagine that. And I want to talk about the Panthers volume vacuum, the one wide receiver in a Joe Brady / New Orleans Saints offense that is going to see the vast majority of targets on the team. And I bring up those two because, again, that's where Joe Brady has his ties to. And, last season, Michael Thomas in that Saints offense saw 32% of the target share, 40% of the air yards. Justin Jefferson and Joe Brady's LSU passing game, 25% of the targets. I think that a major factor in this is where a receiver lines up in Joe Brady's offense, because Michael Thomas last season ran 36% of his routes out of the slot. We know Justin Jefferson spent about 93% of his time in the slot last year. But when you look at this Panthers wide receiver group, there is no pure slot wide receiver. There's not someone that has spent the vast majority of their time in that area in their past. I would nominate as someone, because one, talent-wise, and two, I actually think his skill set matches up perfectly in the slot, DJ Moore for this area. Now, there has to be a drastic change in his usage, because his ADOT has to drop from about 11 yards to down to 8.5 to really maximize this volume vacuum role. But Daigle, I can absolutely see DJ Moore emerging as that go-to target in this Joe Brady passing game, a la Michael Thomas, since the Saints offense keeps being brought up, and Justin Jefferson, as we saw at LSU last year.
The leader in targets, sure, but I do think everyone is going to break out at some point, and it's going to be hard to pick weekly. So yes, I would much rather lean on DJ Moore. He is my wide receiver 8 overall, I believe, right now, just because I think this offense is going to be explosive. While I was researching the Bengals preview that just came out on the site on Monday, I believe, I ran into some old Joe Brady quotes that he said in a press conference upon being hired before the season at LSU. And one among many that sticks out was this one. And he says, "We don't ever speak on our guys individually. I love how they're working, but as a group, these guys work each other. We're understanding this offense. Everybody's going to have opportunities. We say everyone's going to eat." And that's what happened at LSU last year. And I think, again, that's what happens with the Panthers this year. Again, it's going to be hard to pick them weekly. It's going to be a mess in DFS and good matchups, particularly like in week 1 against the Raiders. And you're going to want to sprinkle all of them throughout your lineups. But overall, I really do think all of them are going to pay dividends at some point throughout the year.
Yeah, you're going to get a lot of 5-man protections, ball out quick, and I hope that DJ Moore lines up in the slot. Maybe Curtis Samuel slides in there too. But regardless, this is a team that was second in pass attempts last year. Their defense is worse this year, and then they bring in an offensive coordinator that loves to sling the ball around. So I think at worst, you're getting a Panthers offense that's going to be top 3, top 4 in pass attempts this year. And they have the skill talent. And if Teddy Bridgewater could play at like a league average or the 20th best quarterback this year, I think that there's a chance that this passing offense is much better than what people are thinking for fantasy, especially Teddy Bridgewater becoming like the quarterback like 25 in drafts. I'm a little bit higher than him.
Just looking at some of the Panthers numbers from last year, I mean, they led on only 22% of their offensive snaps last year. And I was actually stunned that they were one of the more pass-happy teams in the NFL last season in neutral game scripts. But then you bring in, obviously, Joe Brady. Out goes all the Turners and Ron Rivera. But Joe Brady and his LSU team attempted almost 100 more passes than any other SEC team out there. It's just I think that playing in the slot is going to be kind of the easy factor here, because we look at Teddy Bridgewater, we look at him having the lowest average depth of target or yards per throw, I should say, last season in the NFL. And I just think DJ Moore, who played about 30% in the slot during his rookie season, only about 18% or 16% last season, I think it would benefit him most to get there. I doubt we see Robbie Anderson in there very much, but just if we can be very binary with it, DJ Moore in the slot, Curtis Samuel and Robbie Anderson winning outside, to me, is the best path to success for this Panthers team.
And Bridgewater only attempted 9 passes deep last year, completing 6 of them. But that's the Saints offense. He's never been the downfield thrower. He doesn't opt for that throughout his career. But at the same time, they're going to scheme that. Matt Rule and Joe Brady will quite a bit once they open up the shallow level with those crossers and yards after the catch plays. So I think we get more shots from Bridgewater. I disagree with you, actually. I think Robbie Anderson will be involved. I think he's going to be the most volatile player in fantasy. He's going to have a couple Will Fuller weeks, but he's going to disappear as well. But overall, being in on this offense, all roads lead right back to Teddy Bridgewater, which, like Hayden, is why I'm higher on him than consensus as well.
Yeah, a lot of people are down on Curtis and Robbie in comparison to where they were drafted last year. But I can tell you this, it's not like Teddy Bridgewater is going to throw 20 uncatchable targets, 20 plus yards down the field like both of those players basically got last season. If just like 5 of those hit this year, or last year, I should say, Curtis's numbers would have been drastically different. If like 4 of those hit last year with Sam Darnold to Robbie Anderson or whoever else is throwing the football, then that would have drastically changed his end of season stats too. So it wouldn't be surprising if we see better numbers for one of those. I doubt both, but at least one of those this year. Okay, Hayden, which camp competition / position battle are you looking forward to this year?
I almost nominated the Rams tight ends. I almost nominated the Rams wide receivers, but I'll go with the Rams running backs here. And the reason for that is Todd Gurley leaves behind 234 available carries, and that includes 29 of them inside the 10-yard line, which is where the most valuable carries, of course, are. And you got Cam Akers versus Darrell Henderson, who only played 93 snaps last year, 39 carries, 6 targets, and that includes 6 pass blocking snaps. And I think this is where Cam Akers fits in. I think that they drafted him because they're looking for somebody that can play on third down. And I think that Cam Akers is that guy. He's pretty smooth as a pass catcher, but he was also 3rd in pass blocking reps among 349 FBS qualifiers last year. So I think that they're going to have him, Cam Akers that is, be in on third downs. I think that's where we're going to get a 3-down roll out of Cam Akers probably within a month of the season. So my money is on Cam Akers over Darrell Henderson and Malcolm Brown.
Ideally, I would like to see them, of course I would, as Mark Ingram, Alvin Kamara light when they played together with the Saints. But yeah, this is why I think Cam Akers has the best chance among all rookie running backs for 250-plus touches, because you don't spend higher draft capital after already trading up for who was thought to be the running back of the future in Darrell Henderson the year afterwards. So Akers has a clear path, which is why he's being drafted quite early. Maybe you can look this up while I'm talking. I believe it's the 5th round right now in best ball drafts. But again, I would also say, you don't average over 9 yards per carry in back-to-back years in college like Darrell Henderson did at Memphis, or get 45 touches and still break, let's see, nearly a 25% broken tackle rate on the 45 touches he did receive last year as a rookie without being talented. So to me, he's still a prime 0 running back option, despite what Josh says about him. Having said that, I think this is Cam Akers' backfield.
Your love of your life, John Daigle, she left to California. She went off and, just left you completely, doesn't even speak to you anymore, but you just can't get over her. Can you, Daigle? I mean, this Darrell Henderson love, I think it needs to stop. I really do, because we can go by their actions. We can go by what he did last season. We can go back to Hayden's point of, I think Darrell Henderson had like 13 pass pro reps during his entire career at Memphis, and then like barely did any of that last season as well. And he's graded negatively in it, like during his entire career. I keep going back to this, but when he was drafted, Darrell Henderson was compared to Lance freaking Dunbar, okay? And Cam Akers was compared to a foundation feature back. That's what the area scout called him, So look, especially in this offseason, there's not a lot to attach ourselves to these rookies until we actually see which order they're running in, and maybe not even preseason games this year. But if you were to ask me the order of touches that the Rams backfield gets this year, it's Cam Akers, then it's Malcolm Brown, then it's Darrell Henderson. I could be totally off on that, but I think we're totally forgetting Malcolm Brown in his backfield.
Go ahead, Daigle.
I would say, 1, Lance Dunbar was very good for the Dallas Renegades, so watch your mouth. And 2, maybe you're right. I don't think so, but maybe you're right. Malcolm Brown, of course, out-snapped Henderson 222-93 last year, out-touched him 71-43. So they clearly prioritize Malcolm Brown behind Todd Gurley as opposed to getting Henderson any run at all. It's strictly a bet on talent dart for me and betting on Henderson.
I think the reason for this is the scheme fits. I think that Cam Akers is going to fit the zone scheme. I think Darrell Henderson had issues with vision adjusting from more of a power scheme into a zone scheme last year. And I think that's why he struggled to see the field. I think he even admitted it after the season that it was just tough to learn how to set up his blocks and then pound forward. And I think that just the Cam Akers, they just reset this on purpose, and then he's going to be a RB2 flex side.
And Cam Akers did what he did with one of the worst offensive lines in the FBS.
You better get used to it.
Yeah, that transition won't be anything new to him.
You and I were about to make the exact same point because
I'm sorry.
that's important to note. No, because I mean, we talk about volume and all that kind of stuff, but really the efficiency is going to come down to offensive line talent and continuity. And last year, the Rams offensive line maybe plummeted more than any other unit across the NFL. But like you just mentioned, Cam Akers is used to bad blocking. He's used to hitting the home run when, the lane is there and he can run in the open field. Maybe they are able to rejuvenate, not turn into like a top 7 offensive line, which they were at times with Sean McVay and Todd Gurley running behind them. But maybe like a middle of the pack offensive line would be a great benefit to this entire Rams offense this season. Okay, we've hit on 3. We've got 3 more.
And just turned 21 2 weeks ago.
Thank you. You're up next, John Daigle.
Let's go with the Colts, another rookie, because the more I think about it, Jonathan Taylor, if you gave him Saquon's hands, he becomes Saquon Barkley. And if you gave Saquon Barkley Jonathan Taylor's running style, he becomes Jonathan Taylor. They're essentially the same prospect. And like I said, the more I think about it, the more I just think Taylor takes over this backfield altogether sooner rather than later. And you can correlate all of these pieces. We talked about in our best ball draft last week how I think the Colts defense is the cheat code defense, given their top 5 soft schedule and their easiest projected schedule based on Vegas win totals alone. And so I think that leads us down the road to not only Jonathan Taylor potentially being offensive rookie of the year, even though his current 10-1 odds are a little too short for my liking. I think it not only leads to them having a tremendous defense with long shot defensive MVPs like DeForest Buckner, because you need sacks really to win that award, or Darius Leonard, who does it all from the middle of the linebacker spot. It's just Jonathan Taylor being behind arguably the best offensive line in the league, led by one of the best all-around players in Quentin Nelson, is, much like J.K. Dobbins, much like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, a match made in heaven. And so I keep coming back to this, and Taylor's ADP has actually slipped a few spots in the past month as the rookie fever has gone away. But that's why I've been drafting him more, and I will continue to draft him more throughout the summer.
Will you take him over Kareem Hunt?
Yes. Quite nearly. I think he's going 8 or 9 spots ahead of Kareem Hunt right now, and that's kind of where I'm taking him.
Yeah, I guess it's just depending on where you're drafting, because just looking at the ADP, I'm looking at it. He's running back 26, and Kareem Hunt is running back 27. Other veteran names are like Darius.
I didn't realize I flipped that much. Okay.
Yeah, Darius Geis is up there. Raheem Mostert, obviously. Like, once to me, Hayden, you get after the James Conner, David Johnson, David Montgomery. Maybe I'll throw in Raheem Mostert, who we talked about in a previous episode on, if he really hits, then, man, you've got a great back, but we just don't know how the volume is going to shake out there. But we know one of these rookie running backs is going to propel himself into a top 12 running back this year, right? Who knows if that's Jonathan Taylor? Who knows if that's J.K. Dobbins? Who knows if it's Cam Akers? It might even be DeAndre Swift. But if you get that right, it can unlock your fantasy team. It can change your fantasy success. We just have to figure out which one it is in a weird offseason, Hayden.
For me, he's the RB 19. I think that's the highest out of the Rotoworld rankings. And the reason for that is I think that if there's a team that somehow wins 11 games that we just didn't see coming, my money is on the Colts. They had an upgrade at quarterback. I mean, I think we're kind of underestimating how much better Phillip Rivers is than Jacoby Brissett. Phillip Rivers, 7.6 yards per attempt last year. Jacoby Brissett, 6.6. They get T.Y. Hilton back for a full season. All 5 of their offensive linemen return, and that's like a really nasty unit. Plus, they have the easiest schedule according to opponent win totals. So I think that they're going to be in more positive game scripts than we're expecting. I think that Jonathan Taylor is going to be benefiting from that the most. And get out of here with the Nyheim Hines catching all these passes. The offensive skill positions you're trotting out. Michael Pittman's better. You get Paris Campbell back, and then you have T.Y. Hilton. I think that is just going to be Jonathan Taylor feasting with like 15 to 20 rush attempts per game, and that's why he's going to be the RB2 for rookie running backs this year.
Josh, the more I look into it, seriously, I haven't seen so many stars align for a 13-win season and Frank Reich Coach of the Year like in the past 5 years. It just seems like it's all too obvious.
Yeah. And we know that Philip Rivers never misses any time, but let's say he does now during the twilight years of his career. At worst, you have Jacoby Brissett who just steps right in, So having Jacoby in there as like a 2 to 3 to 4 game starter is not the worst thing. It's not going to derail your season at all. I'm with you guys. I mean, Jonathan Taylor, everything's there other than the passing game work. And we have seen it in the past, specifically with someone like Melvin Gordon, who didn't have a lot of passing game work at Wisconsin, that it's just hidden at times, and maybe it comes out once they actually start giving him opportunity and targets there. I know he's had a few drops in his career with the Badgers, Hayden, but I think it's something that you can improve on. And if that's there, then he truly is a complete running back who has yards created for him and then create yards on his own after contact as well. Okay, let's go to the New York Jets. We have barely talked about the New York Jets this offseason. Let's change that right now.
I wonder why.
Yeah, there might be a reason why we have not talked about them. I want to talk about the Jets wide receivers, though. Well, pass catchers. Let's put it pass catchers, okay? Because let me revert back to Daigle's column on targets available right now for NFL teams compared to which players left in 2019. Well, for 2020, the Jets wide receivers have 183 targets available, 37% of their volume in 2019. And over 2,000 air yards available. That's 50% of all of their air yards from last season. That leads the NFL, the highest percentage in the NFL. So you can question Sam Darnold, and I think people like Stephen Ruiz and Bill Barnwell have done a great job of that in their columns recently, that even in a perfect situation to succeed, when the blocking is great, he's just not making the throws that he should. But that volume is going to go somewhere. Right? Jamison Crowder still got over 100 targets last year, so we can't see like a massive increase from him. He's going as the wide receiver 49. Rashad Perryman, the wide receiver 63. Denzel Mims, the wide receiver 65. And Chris Herndon as the tight end 20 around that area. The Jets were in 3 wide receiver sets 69% of the time last year. We might not love any of these options, but let's just take a step back, Hayden, and say, okay, Sam Darnold does take a step this season. He does show better play. There's going to be an outside receiver in either Perryman or Mims that greatly benefits from that. And at their price tag right now and where they're going in drafts, it's going to turn out to be a great value.
Yeah, they're essentially free in any format. And the Jets offensive line should be better than it was last year. They spent some free agency capital and then also their first round pick on the offensive line. Maybe Sam Darnold takes another step, like you mentioned. My issue on the outside in particular is the cornerbacks in their division. Stephon Gilmore, Tre'Davious White, Byron Jones. I think it's going to be tough to win on the outside, and they have the 30th easiest schedule, third hardest. And I think the guy that's going to be benefiting the most, like you said earlier, is Jamison Crowder, who I think is probably the most talented guy at this point of those 3 receiver sets. And he has the most chemistry, of course, with Sam Darnold. I want to be buying Jamison Crowder at ADP and just kind of leaving Denzel Mims, who I kind of like, and Rashad Perriman, who's probably a little bit underrated as a talent. Leave those guys on the bench and just draft Jamison Crowder.
So the good news is both of these guys are going to play, given the 11 personnel and the lack of competition. They're not going to be benched for Josh Dotson. Get out of here. However, Jamison Crowder, though I expect him to lead in targets, especially given his rapport with Sam Darnold, that's already been proven last year. Jamison Crowder is also a smaller slot wideout. He's not an alpha male, whereas both Perryman and Denzel Mims have that makeup. The thing is, this offense under Adam Gase cannot support both. It's got to be one or the other. And although I'll prefer it to be Mims, I think he has the higher ceiling. I know you're very high on him, Josh. Given the tumultuous offseason, I've been selecting Perryman as that breakout. And it's funny because those air yards come from Robbie Anderson, and both players run similar routes. Mims in particular, PFF charted 29% of his receiving yards on the go route last year. So again, I would like it to be Mims, but we don't know how the rookies will fare in the weird offseason. So I've been selecting Perriman as that guy to take over, at least for this year.
Something with Mims, a lot of these college wide receivers get production fed to them. Mims, I believe, had 1 screen catch last season, like just one.
Wow.
He didn't have any catches really manufactured for him at all last year. And it's funny, Hayden, I posted these numbers on Twitter, the 2,000 air yards, that's the highest rate in the NFL, and just asked the question, who are these all going to? And just received a boatload of pictures of Xavier Howard, of Byron Jones, of Tre'Davious White, of Stephon Gilmore, which is totally valid. And congratulations, you made the same good joke, but the same joke. I totally understand the Brashad Perryman, not love, but interest based on this. It's not going to be an every week starter, right? But if I can actually connect what the Jets did this season to what a team did heading into the 2019 season, I would compare them very much to the Buffalo Bills, completely reworking their offensive line to give, their quarterback the ability to stay inside of structure, hopefully improving the wide receivers around him, the pass catchers around him. And we saw, and I know it's a different team, but we saw that the Bills then basically propelled John Brown into a top 20 wide receiver, the wide receiver 21. Maybe that happens here, and maybe it shocks us that the Jets can do it. I'm trying to give some, optimism here because, again, we have not talked about the Jets once this offseason. So,
hey, Daigle, you like some Chris Herndon, don't you? A little bit as like a tight end 2 flyer.
I love Chris Herndon. If you ever asked me bold takes for the season, I would probably say Chris Herndon, top 10 tight end.
Okay, we will be doing that podcast later on this summer then. Okay,
good and bad.
So we have one more camp competition to go. Hayden Winks, it is yours.
I'm going to pick the 49ers running backs, and we just spent a couple podcasts ago talking about Raheem Mostert versus Tevin Coleman. My main point I want to go over is that it's okay to have both running backs above consensus if you like the offense, and I love the 49ers rushing offense with Kyle Shanahan, so I'm okay with Mostert at ADP. I think that he's the better player than Tevin Coleman. I think that the second half of last season laid that out. But that doesn't keep me away from Tevin Coleman, who's currently the RB 43 in best ball ADP. I have him ranked up all the way up as my RB 33. He's the guy that I keep drafting in the 10th, 11th, 12th round of leagues. And I just want pieces of this entire rushing offense. They combined for the fourth most PPR points last year at the running back position. And Jerick McKinnon's still yet to resume cutting. There's a good chance that they actually just cut him. They've already cut his salary like under $1 million. So I think that Raheem Mostert and Tevin Coleman are both okay buys at ADP.
I love Raheem Mostert's skill set. We all do. He was a preseason breakout stud waiting to break out and finally did so over the Niners' last 8 games last year. However, it's just 8 games of production, a lack of receiving chops and receiving usage altogether, which is why I cannot stomach the ADP right now. I love Tevin Coleman in his price. We know Tevin Coleman is going to be used in the passing game. We also know he started the divisional round for them and was only removed leading to that 29 carry game for Mostert in the conference championship because he was injured. And then he was injured as well in the Super Bowl. So I still think sprinkling in Coleman is a smart way to go because you're going to get 6 to 8 starts from him. Whatever starts are in the 49ers backfield, you're going to get it. He's going to lead in touches. And I think the same for Mostert, which is why it only makes sense to grab the later guy among the two, to me anyways.
This is super smart from you, Hayden. Imagine that. Because both are going in the range where you can draft both. And that's, much easier to do in a format like Best Ball, in a format like Scott Fish Bowl, when you don't have to we don't have to worry about spots on your bench just taking up, pointless weeks, right? Because rosters that have around 20 to 25, 22 names, you can have players on there that, if they're starting or if someone gets injured, then you can plug someone in and you're going to have a top 15 running back. I'll also say that heading into last season, the 49ers backfield basically had 3 names to it, right? Not just 2 names to it. So minimizing that down to 2 names and also going back to what we said in that Raheem Mostert episode, that this offensive line should be even better than it was last year. There were periods where Joe Staley and Mike McGlinchey missed time. Their center missed time as well. Having, the bulk of their offensive line play together for 85, 90% of the snaps would even improve this running game, most likely. And that's a dangerous outcome to what Kyle Shanahan has been working on in his lab over the last few months, I'm sure. So
the one reason why I'm okay with Raheem Mostert at ADP right now is Last year, the 49ers were winning like all the time. That's probably why he was not seeing any receiving workload. And there's nothing about his athletic profile that makes me believe that he can't catch a couple passes. Not to mention, if Deebo Samuel's out for the first 6 weeks because he goes on the PUP list with his broken foot, who are they going to be throwing the ball to? They have George Kittle. Then they have Brandon Ayuk, who's a rookie with a pandemic offseason. Basically, nobody behind him at receiver. What if Raheem Mostert gets 3-4 targets a game and they're running in the best rushing offense or one of the top 3 rushing offenses in the league? I think there's a path to where Raheem Mostert, even though he hasn't proven that he can be a pass catcher, that he could catch a couple dump-off passes, at least in the beginning of the year when Deebo Samuel might be limited or completely out.
Yeah.
I still prefer Coleman and best ball given opportunity cost, but whatever the case, in redraft and season-long leagues, it's going to be hell for both because good luck picking them.
This is why I kept bringing up Kendrick Bourne's name. I know he's like not interesting at all during our draft, but at least he's going to get some volume while he's working there because it's total unknowns, like you mentioned. Brandon Ayuk, basically a one-year producer at Arizona State, and obviously Kyle Shanahan loves him. Then you had Jalen Hurd, who missed his entire rookie season, Trent Taylor, who missed the entire 2019 season, Dante Pettis, who is still on the outside looking in. Like, who the heck knows? But what we do know is that this backfield can be productive. And again, in a best ball format or Scott Fishbowl, something like that, where you have this wealth of a bench, drafting both, I think, is smart. I think it's especially smart. Okay. Any closing words? Do you think we said it all?
No, I think that's it. Yeah. I'm just hoping I can keep drafting these tight ends in Scott Fishbowl. That's what I want.
There you go. All right, guys. That's going to do it for us. We'll be back later on this week, Friday morning, with our favorites episode. Yes, our favorite picks, ones you must leave all July drafts with. Again, that'll be on Friday, and that'll be with Patrick Daugherty joining us as well. Okay. Go and subscribe, rate and review, help us out. Tell one friend. For Hayden Winks, for John Daigle, I'm Josh Norris. Up the Villa. Talk to us soon.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.